Hello everyone, my name is Nicol David and I'm a former professional squash player from Malaysia. During my career, I had the opportunity to win 8 world titles and sustain world number 1 for over 9 consecutive years. I retired 1 year ago and I'm truly excited to share this Q&A session with Steve.
Hey guys, I'm Steve Hooker. I'm a retired pole vaulter from Australia. I won the gold medal in the 2008 Olympic Games. I had an amazing career over 12 years. I loved every second of it. And now I've retired. I retired in 2013, a couple of months after my first son, Maxim, was born. I now have 3 boys and a frantic life, juggling life with them and working as CEO of a property development company here in Melbourne. All right, can you talk a little bit about how all-consuming the world of professional sport is?
I would describe professional sports as being in a battle. It's very hardcore. It's a life where you have to train 6 days a week, twice a day, and when you really learn the true meaning of physical exhaustion. Every training session is a battlefield. You have to fight against yourself to push your limits. You have to have a strong mind to take on the challenges and keep coming back again even when your body can't really take it anymore. In this battlefield, you learn how to build a strong mind, where you learn about resilience, where you learn to motivate yourself, because it's only up to you to reach your goals. No one else is in the battlefield for you it's you against everything. People see the strength of a pro athlete during competition, but I believe the strongest part of a pro athlete is the toughness during training. That makes them feel unstoppable in their own arena of competition. Mentally and physically having to prepare each day for training and to be back at it every time is what the grind is all about. That makes the accomplishment so much sweeter, right?
This is an interesting question because when you're in professional sport is your entire life, but it's a really interesting balance between the intensity of training and this massive goal that you're working towards, and some of the awesome bits of it, like midday naps, really focusing on your nutrition and cooking for yourself and all of those sorts of things. So you get to really look after yourself properly in a really meaningful way. But you've got this intense goal and these really concise periods of time where you're doing really high intensity, high focus training. So there's, in a way, it's your entire life, but if you set it up well, you can have an incredibly balanced experience while you're doing it.
So, Steve, can you recall the first few days of your life post-sport? And were they easier or more difficult than you'd expected?
The key really is the lead up to those few days. So how the decision comes about as to why you're walking away from sport. And for me, my son Max was born on the 21st of June in 2013. I had every intention at that point in my life of carrying on jumping and working towards the Rio Olympics. But fatherhood changes your perspective on life. My birthday is on the 16th of July, and I was actually doing a pole vault session on that very day, and it wasn't going well. The last couple of weeks of training had not gone well. It was clear my perspective and my passion and my drivers were changing. And I clearly remember sitting down and having a discussion with my coach at the time, Dan Paff. And he had this discussion where he said, you should be grateful for the career you've had. And I really was. And I realized that all I was fighting for now was a happy ending, and coming to terms with the fact that that wasn't going to happen was all I needed to do, and it allowed me to move on. And it was on that day when I decided that I would take a break from pole vault and start exploring what would be next.
I have to confess, they were amazing. For the first time in ages, I didn't have to wake up in the morning and prepare my mind and body to put in the hard work for training or to be set for competition. I honestly felt relief. Now my mornings have new adventures, and I think that's something athletes do very well, and is adapting to new situations. I accept my new reality, and leaving my sport behind wasn't a heartbreak for me.
How did the transition affect you from a mental health point of view? Did you experience any kind of loss of identity?
100% I experienced a total crisis of identity. I'd been Steve the pole vaulter for the longest period of time. Where I live, like, I'm kind of recognizable and people recognize me as that person that did that thing. And as soon as you finish, you've got to figure out a whole lot of stuff. And I was juggling figuring out who I was away from pole vault with the fact that I was also had this new job as being a dad. So everything was up in the air, and it was a very confusing and complicated time. The one thing I had going for me was a framework that I sort of used to keep in touch with myself and how I was feeling. And one of the key questions in that framework is like, who are you? Asking yourself that at a deep level. So not just having this, so I was sort of aware that I wasn't sure who I was, but I was actually asking myself and keeping track of that each day and trying to redefine what that was pretty regularly. So whilst it was difficult, I was kind of pushing back against this framework regularly so that whilst it was challenging, I knew that every day I was keeping account of it and I was always working on it.
The transition for me actually started 2 years ago before I officially retired, and it was truly challenging. Suddenly it hits you that you're not young anymore, that your body doesn't respond the same way, and also mentally you're exhausted. It's heartbreaking because you've dedicated all your life to becoming the best at your sport, and it has come with huge sacrifices. So I definitely felt overwhelmed and remember asking myself, if I'm not a squash player, what am I? In spite of all the emotional turmoil, the moment I stopped focusing on the problem, then I actually started opening up myself to the opportunities that were there for me. I started to discover and learn about myself better and got more excited about the possibilities that I could take on for myself. So Steve, how long did it take you to adjust to your new reality? What small changes and steps do you take to help you get there?
It took me 4 years to adjust to my new reality. And that is such a cliche for an Olympian to work in Olympiads like that. What a cliche, 4 years to get it right, but it did. And there was a lot of small steps along the way, and that really aligns with what we do with AIA Vitality. Take small steps, make small changes, and you can see a big result. And I had a lot of small steps that would take place within each year. And then at the end of each year, there would be a big change. So at the end of year one, I made a decision that I wanted to make my living away from sport. I wanted to keep sport special and as a passion to me, and I didn't want that to be my occupation. So that was the end of year one. Then I moved back into property development. I took a job back at the company I used to work for in property, back out of university. And that was great. It showed me I loved property, really passionate about that, but I didn't want to be in a big corporate environment. So lots of small changes, lots of learning along the ways there, but at the end, a big realization. I then went and worked at a startup. I had ambitions of starting my own startup, and I thought working in someone else's would be a great place to learn and take some small lessons along the way through that process. And again, fantastic experience. I learned heaps about product development, that I love working with people, developing new products, fleshing out ideas, and all of that sort of stuff. So at the end of that year, I knew I want to be in an entrepreneurial business, but I wanted to be in property. And at that point in time, an opportunity came up to work with a really entrepreneurial guy that runs a property company. And that's where I found my calling. And I've been working in that company as the CEO for the last 3 years. And honestly, I get out of bed now with the same amount of enthusiasm as I did when I was an athlete. So it took all these gradual tiny steps and all of these learnings and constantly reassessing what was working for me and what was not, and making the big calls to make a change that was going to be in the direction of where I wanted to go at those regular intervals. And for me, it just happened to be each year.
Family is everything to me. They were the first to hear me out and be there for me to listen to what I needed to do. I'm fortunate I had great people around me, my family, my friends, and my support team. During this time, I learned to listen to others so much more. I opened myself to get advice and share my feelings. The more I talked about the new stage of my life, the better I understood what I wanted to do. And that was to give back. Share my experience in my country to help grow sports, health, and work closely with youth, as I think they need this now more than ever.
What did you do to help you find new meaning in your post-sport life?
Meaning for me in post-sport life is very, very different from meaning in sports life. So your meaning in your life as an athlete is very much tied to a date that is really static in time and an event that's really static in time. So if it's an Olympic year, You know, for me in 2008, it was the 22nd of August, 2008. I'll never forget that date because it was drilled into my memory. And I knew there'd be a 3-hour window on that day that I had to be at my best so that I could beat everyone in the world. My whole life revolved around it. It's a really simple way of living. It's boom or bust way of living, which is why it's a really tough mental thing to do. But it's simple because the goals are there, the meaning is there, and you're pushing towards that. It is really difficult. And every year you have that. You've got basically this 6-month cycle where there's a goal. Did I achieve it? Did I not? Let's improve things. Go again. Did I achieve it? Did I not? Coming into real life away from sport, it's different. And I find that I've got to look at things in kind of 3 different ways to make sure that I've got meaning and passion and relevance to everything that I'm doing. And the way I look at it is, how is my day structured? And do I enjoy who I see every day on a daily basis and the types of thing I'm doing? How's my week structured? So am I incorporating things that I'm interested in? Am I getting enough exercise? Am I doing all those sorts of things in a week? And how's my year structured? So have I got things that I'm working towards, I'm excited about, big goals that are kind of there that I can slowly accumulate the steps towards those. So if I look at life in that context, I can kind of have an element of what I experienced that kept giving me meaning in sport, but it's more relevant and practical for everyday living. So Nicol, how important were family and community in helping you adjust to this new phase of your life?
Create a plan for retirement. I think I was fortunate to have close friends around me that helped me realize I couldn't plan for my post-sport life the same day I retired. I had decided that I wanted to have the opportunity to give back to my country as much as possible, so I started to plan towards that. I found so much happiness in focusing on that we began to create the drafts for my own foundation and started to work towards sharing my story through talks and opinion writing. Planning helped me change my career in a way, and now I have full time to focus on this new venture. Just curious, Steve, do you view yourself as the same person now as you were when you were competing? How have you changed, or how have you grown?
The short answer to this is I absolutely do not view myself as the same person. I feel like a completely different person. Probably from a cellular level, the cells have all gone out of my body and recycled and rejuvenated. And that person that jumped 5 meters and 96 centimeters in the bird's nest in Beijing is now totally gone. Certainly from a mentality point of view, I have. I can't even relate to that person. So for me, it's like looking at a completely different person when I see that performance. The thought of running down a runway with a pole and putting my whole health at risk is like beyond me. I still have that like competitive urge and all that sort of stuff, but I could never channel it into that activity. I can't even imagine what it would be like anymore. So totally different. I've changed by becoming a lot more of a listener. You don't have to be much of a listener when you're an athlete. You're a real talker when you're an athlete. I think I've become a much better listener. And I find that whilst when I was an athlete, a lot of the answers had to come from within and from something at my core. Now, what I find is I can build up the foundation of myself more by listening, and then the answers start to present themselves. So I've worked really hard on becoming a really good listener, understanding what I can add and where my areas of value are, but more importantly, what other people can add, and making sure that I'm doing the best possible job I can do to support them in being the best that they can be. And that's been the enjoyable thing for me, particularly coming from a really individual sport to now working with teams, is doing the best I can so that every day those around me can have an awesome experience and feel like they're contributing and that we're all getting the best out of each other.
What lessons from your life in sport have you been able to apply in life post-sport?
Most of the lessons that I learnt in sport are not applicable. So most of the lessons I learnt in sport are about this super extreme lifestyle that you live as an athlete. It's like super extreme, super selfish, really driven to one objective that is very clear. And life is not like that. Life is very diverse. Life is full of grey areas, and the destination is never certain. So the one thing that I did take from sport that I think is the most valuable thing is the ability to have a vision for something that's going to take place in the future, see it very, very clearly, and be able to step back from that moment in time and understand what you've got to do to enable that to happen. So that's what I've always been able to do. I've always been able to imagine myself clearing the bar on a particular day at a particular height and how I will do it, and then understand all the steps I have to take to get myself there. Now my job is to do that, which I still can do on any project that I work on. I know what it can look like in 5 years' time. However, now it's not just up to me. So now my job is to be able to have that vision and understand what it looks like, understand all the steps that I need to do to get there. But now it's not me taking the steps, it's 100 other people that I see and talk to every day. So it's communicating and sharing that vision and learning different ways of sharing that vision and communicating that vision, and making sure that everyone understands the steps and the part in those steps that they can take, so that we're all slowly as a group pushing towards this thing that we know is possible in the future.
I always say being world number one is something you have to gain every day. You have to be willing to do whatever it takes to reach your goal. There are no excuses, no one to blame for, and no one to do it for you. It's up to your own determination and how many times you're willing to fall down to get back up again. Every day you fight for it, and therefore every day you gain it. If you want to be a good student, you have to gain it every day. If you want to be a good boss or a good friend, you have to gain it every day. Nothing we have in life should be taken for granted, and make the most of each day to become a better person in your own way. Thank you so much for spending time with us. It's been fun, and I want to give a shout out to all Malaysians watching. Lovely hanging out with you, Steve. Take care, everyone, and stay safe.
Thank you, everyone, for watching. And thank you so much, Nicole, for this interesting transcontinental chat. It's amazing times that we live in. A shout out to everyone in Australia. I hope you're all hanging in there, particularly those like me who are in Melbourne, who are in isolation. Hang in there. We'll all have a whole bunch of fun times waiting for us on the other side. See you later.